Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Citizen Representatives Podcast. My name is Tyler. I'm here with my underpaid friend, Adam. Adam, how are you today?
Underpaid.
Underpaid?
Funny you should say. Yeah.
We just had Labor Day, so you're gonna go on strike to support your labor pals?
That's a good idea. If I had a union, I'd strike. No, I'm good. You pay me well in spiritual karma.
Spiritual karma. Okay. I wish I had a fuel level of that. I think that might be useful in many ways. Like a karma indicator, like going through a hard time, like am I paying this off? Am I accruing? Like what's the deal? How does that work?
Any connecting endeavor, any attempt to spread goodwill. Hopefully we spread some goodwill on this podcast and not just, miserable news. But
yes.
Yeah.
No, we try not to spread too much of either of those things. But I did read a statement by Scott Adams, who's the Dilbert creator and cartoonist, and he said something along the lines of people in the news and with their social media accounts and things like that are now becoming so influential that they perhaps have a death count themselves. What do you think about that?
A death count.
A death toll, you spread something that causes somebody to go do something or not do something. And
gotcha.
Now maybe, is that something we should worry about, or is that a thing?
No. Can we regulate one more thing in this world? Please, no. Maybe just teach people good principles and let them govern themselves, right?
I think the lords of karma will have a say, but hopefully not the lords of Washington, D.C. or anything like that.
Yeah, we've had enough of them.
Citizen Representatives reduces corruption in politics by uniting as legal citizens to elect lawmakers with the iron-clad agreement that they'll vote on bills according to a majority vote by citizens in their district or state. We're going to talk about for a moment El Salvador. I know El Salvador is not part of the United States, but the principles of citizen representatives can be applied to any nation, any state, any sort of big group, which is giving power to the people in a greater way. Now, they voted to make Bitcoin legal tender in their country, along with the United States dollar. So apparently their own currency was not strong enough, or it was too volatile, or something. So approximately 20 years ago, I believe, they adopted the United States dollar as their reserve currency. And a few months ago, they voted to make Bitcoin legal tender in their country. And today was the first day that went into effect. So one of the things that they did as part of an incentive to get people to participate in the Bitcoin network was to anyone who signed up for this particular wallet. I think it's called Chivo, the Chivo app, which Chivo, I think, means goat in Spanish. So they would give them $30 worth of Bitcoin. So it was an incentive to get started in the Bitcoin network. They're pushing what's called the Lightning Network. We've talked about this before. Bitcoin itself is it's actually quite speedy as a settlement compared to a lot of things, but it's not the quickest. So they've created something on the second layer of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the base layer. It's relatively slow, but it's very secure. A step above that is called the Lightning Network, and it's much faster. A little bit less security, but it's still highly secure. And so they've made it a requirement for businesses to accept Bitcoin as payment. And so now these huge corporations, if their desire to be in El Salvador, they are required to accept Bitcoin. And so you have McDonald's, you have Starbucks, you have the local shops. They all have their signs up now that make it very easy to transact in Bitcoin. So this was, everyone was really excited about this, and so there was a kind of a grassroots movement for people to support the people in El Salvador by themselves buying $30 worth of Bitcoin, with the idea of if everyone buys $30 worth of Bitcoin, it's going to increase the value of the Bitcoin, so that these people who are the first one, in my estimation and understanding, the first country to actually do this, and to support those people so that they can try to remove themselves and lift themselves out of, not everyone's in poverty in El Salvador, but it's basically a third world country. And if I'm mistaken on that, please let me know. So everyone was anticipating the price of Bitcoin to have a little bump, because it had been up high, it had been relatively high, it had been around 53,000 per Bitcoin. And as soon as it happens today, Bitcoin crashed as much as 19%, and it could have even been more than that. So it got down to, it was something like 42,000. It bounced back up, and right now, as of this time, it's around 47 or 48,000. But there are so many people who don't want this experiment to succeed. And one of those being the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the United States government, the European Union. All of these places that have a big central bank, they really don't want this to succeed. And because if it does, it's kind of a countdown timer for the end of those types of institutions. What's your take on this? Is this good for El Salvador? Is this good for the world? Will we not know for several years, or what do you think?
Yeah, it may take some time to figure it out. So El Salvador itself purchased, what was it, 20 billion? Was it 20 billion American dollars worth of Bitcoin, or was it 20?
I don't think it was 20 billion. I think it was 20 million.
Oh, okay. We're talking about El Salvador.
As of right now, they've purchased 550 Bitcoin.
Oh, so okay. So even maybe a little bit more than 20 million. But so when was that purchased prior to the live date of today?
Some of it probably was. So I
wonder if that contributed. Well, that wouldn't have contributed a huge amount, but
so that's about 27 million. If you take 50,000 as a round number of what Bitcoin is worth, and I think they purchased 550 Bitcoin, excuse me. So that equals about 27 million.
Okay. It's a nice injection for sure. And so I wonder if that probably contributed a little bit if they did it prior to Tuesday, and then immediately give people. I wonder if the people of El Salvador got the Bitcoin at the rate of 52, or did they get today's rate basically? Hopefully they didn't get it at 52, because that would devalue their share.
I don't know what rate they got it at. So the president of El Salvador announced during the day, okay, we've bought X amount of Bitcoin. And later in the day, because the Bitcoin had gone down, said, well, we bought the dip, and then they bought in 2 or 3 segments today. At least is what the president of El Salvador stated. So
yeah,
what do you think? Is this going to be is this a good thing in your opinion, or what do you think?
I think it's a phenomenal move by El Salvador. I mean, I applaud them for being forward thinking on this. I mean, there's no guarantee that crypto and Bitcoin will take off, but I think there's a good basis for understanding blockchain that I think that looks to me that it's inevitable. But I think Bitcoin's going to survive no matter what. And so, I give them high marks for making that investment and giving it a shot, and hopefully it works out for them. I mean, you hate to see these big actors coming in and trying to crash it for them. I mean, I think that's just, I have a lot of words for that, but that's uh, it's unfortunate.
Usually the attacks by the IMF and the World Bank are more under the table, and they do it by lending, right? It's such a huge problem. They go, oh, you're a poor country. We're going to lend you some money, and it's money that they just create on their own. It's not like they went out and worked for the money. These world banks, they just create it, and then they lend it to poorer nations, charge interest, and then they basically have these smaller countries in bondage. And so this is a big middle finger to these big institutions saying, no, we're not going to do this anymore. We would like to have a currency that is not going to be debased by you, that is going to increase in value over time. And that's the big hope. And there will be quite a bit of volatility, I think, for several years.
Yeah, no, I mean, regardless, even without these big actors making these kinds of moves, which is just, it's cowardly, I think. Even without that, Bitcoin's always going to be volatile. So, but I'm sure El Salvador, the president, and the people around him took that into consideration. So I'm rooting for them.
Yeah, I definitely am too.
And not solely because I have a little bit of Bitcoin, very little bit, but I have some.
Yeah, I like rooting for the little guy in these types of situations. You have these big behemoths with just all of the power and all of the money, and it's going to be kind of like a David and Goliath thing. It's like, what are the weaknesses of this system, and what can we do to exploit those? And it's going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds, because the Bitcoin is only just over 10 years old, and it's making such a huge impact on so many facets. So this may not be the place to do this, because we're really not, we're not biblical scholars, but this has to have Bitcoin in a way must have been talked about in some way or fashion in the Bible or the scriptures in some way. Are you aware of anything along this lines? Or because I just see it as a way that it can bring kind of the prosperity that was promised in the Bible and the 1,000-year millennium.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I know a guy. I know somebody more versed in the Bible than we are. That would be an interesting question. There very well could be something that could be correlated.
See,
correlation doesn't always equal revelation, but
yeah. Anyway, I say that, and I should go look into the scriptures. I don't have the mind. Some people can go and read a passage, and then they'll go, "Oh, that word is interesting. Maybe I should translate that into what the original meaning was. Let's look and see if it's what the connections are in all of these scriptures." And anyway, it would just be interesting to see. I'm not saying that that Bitcoin is specifically mentioned in the Bible, but I do see it as a big kind of bulldozer, just paving the way for a lot of things to happen that need to happen that wouldn't happen on their own.
I think in the larger scheme of things, I think this is a success, right? I applaud El Salvador for doing this, because I think somebody needs to be first to do things that are sort of bold and I don't want to say the word fight back, but they push back against the established system. And I think I think they're earning some good spiritual karma for doing this, regardless of how it plays out on the material level.
Switching gears, have you taken your daily horse dewormer pills? Or paste? No. I don't know how you ingest it. It's either a paste or pills or something. But are you getting your deworming?
Deworming? No.
Yeah.
No. Are you talking about the ivermectin?
Yeah,
Yeah. No.
I'm just making a silly joke. We'll get to that in a second. In related news, Fauci, this seems like a big deal to me. The Intercept, which is a media publication, they filed a Freedom of Information Act with the government, and they were able to get 900 pages of material related to the U.S. funded coronavirus research in China. And it basically directly states that, yes, the United States funded the Wuhan labs, and so many people think, and the general consensus is now that the coronavirus came from these labs. I don't think that I hesitate to use the experts because they've been proven wrong so many times, but the experts are generally saying now that they believe that the virus escaped from the lab. And so as a seemingly, I don't want to be too sure in my statement here. Seemingly, the coronavirus came from funding from the United States government, which was basically approved by Dr. Fauci. He was directly asked about this by Rand Paul in Congress, and he denied it. And so now with these documents, they're saying that he lied to Congress, and it seems to be a big scandal to me, but it doesn't seem to be making as many ripples as it should. Does this even make any difference, Adam, that we know this? Or did we already know it? And what's the deal?
What does it really matter? Isn't that Hillary Clinton?
She said, what difference at this point does it make?
What difference? Yeah, very good. Sorry, I messed that up. Yeah, I mean, that's always the hard part, right? You get the smoking gun that a lot of people probably sensed was out there. And I haven't watched any mainstream news today. I assume that Fox has probably picked this up and is running with it. But aside from them, MSNBC, CNN, the networks, the Reuters, the AP, I'm sure they're ignoring it. The big papers. I'll have to go look. But yeah, that's always the disappointment, is that it just doesn't. They protect their own, right?
Well, this is the pattern. Something that's very damaging to the left and to the system. A lot of the people that are
establishment,
Republicans are part of it. So this isn't just pointing fingers at one particular side. It's a huge conglomeration of people who are part of the system.
Yeah.
Anything that puts them in a negative light is poo-pooed and put off to the side. And it's denied and denied and denied until it doesn't make a difference anymore. And this is what happened with Trump. There were so many false stories put out against him that eventually turned out to be true or false. It was the opposite of what was portrayed in the news. And then so many people base their votes based on a false narrative or a false assumption or complete falsehoods. But as soon as the election was over, then the things started coming out, like Hunter Biden's laptop and a number of things that have been proven to be hoaxes. And we're going to get to hoaxes in a minute. But what would Dr. Fauci have to do to lose support of the media? Because it seems that he can do no wrong to them, despite being wrong at every turn and possibly having the biggest hand in creating this. I don't think he was necessarily there with vials and droppers and things like that creating it, but he created the place and the situation for this to happen. He knew that the gain of function was not safe, and a lot of people knew that, and so Trump stopped the funding of these actual things when he was president, and they were resumed after Trump left office. What would Fauci have to do to lose the trust of these publications?
I think he can just about get away with murder, but well, probably has. But no, I'm kidding. Um, I think he can get away with most anything. It takes the base of the establishment opinion to push the media to the point where they can't not. And leaders really. I mean, you look at the situation with Andrew Cuomo. A different, if it hadn't been COVID, if you didn't have, well, it wasn't even the nursing, right? It was the sex abuse. That was unfortunately, it took sex abuse rather than people dying and unnecessarily
And by the way, they've come out and said that the actual body count from his decision to put people in nursing homes was like double what it was originally
the new
reported as.
governor. Yeah, the new
New governor
governor's
came out with that.
shedding light. And that's
So
their
continue.
tactic, right? It's like, oh, we'll release this information later, just like Hunter Biden. Like, okay, yeah, we'll get to that. And I think, with Fauci, it's like, okay, yeah, when he's dead, we'll reveal all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot for them to eat their own. They're more than happy to eat their own, but only when they have to, because they'll just replace their own with their own. But
Once their usefulness is up, once they're too much of a distraction.
yeah, once their capital is gone, then yeah, it's time to go, and they'll eat them quickly. But it takes that kind of pressure, and I think they realize they can get away with just about anything. And so I think, but that's the problem: is if the base establishment that believes everything out of the word of Lord Fauci himself, that wants to believe in these, and I understand wanting to believe in somebody, that they're giving you the right direction, the CDC, Fauci, the president, the Congress, whatever it is. I understand people wanting to believe that, but if they don't get the information, how are they gonna, hold back? Who holds the media accountable for not putting that out there? And so if they're not getting to the right sources, then you never get that. You never reach critical mass where they actually have to start cleaning house.
So speaking of the media, Rolling Stone, you probably heard of this. They put out a story. The premise of the story: gunshot victims left waiting as horse dewormer overdoses overwhelm Oklahoma hospitals, doctor says. So this one doctor was quoted saying that all of these ERs are overwhelmed with ivermectin overdoses. And so gunshot victims are not able to get the help that they need because people have been overdosing on ivermectin, trying to cure themselves or get better or prevent COVID in some way. And shortly thereafter, the hospital put out a statement saying, this guy hasn't worked here in 2 months. We're not overwhelmed. There's no basis to this story. But before that happened, the story was spread far and wide because it fit so many, it checked off so many of the things that made a good story for the left. People are, they're not vaccinated, so they're putting everyone at danger. Now they're clogging up the hospitals, and now the gunshot victims can't do that. And so the hospital came out with a statement calling it BS. They haven't retracted the story. They've updated the story saying that that Rolling Stone has been unable to identify. Okay, it says the update. One hospital has denied Dr. Jason McElia's claim that ivermectin overdoses are causing emergency room backlogs and delays in medical care in rural Oklahoma, and Rolling Stone has been unable to independently verify any such cases as of the time of this update. Okay, so this is just like Biden pulling out of Afghanistan. He's doing everything in the wrong order. Before you run a story, you need to independently verify a doctor's claims. You don't just take the word of some doctor and then run a story and then not retract it and do a weak update. And this is kind of the thing that I'm talking about. Are are some of these, and maybe I shouldn't go here again, are some of these publications going to have their own death toll? Like, how are we supposed to deal with this if they're, they're making people make decisions to do one thing or the other based on falsehoods? And sooner or later, that's going to catch up to people. I mean, this is the same Rolling Stone that had the rape hoax of, I can't remember, but it was some big deal, and they got sued, and it was a big mess. So again, this goes to the idea that as long as it fits the narrative, they don't seem to show any sort of remorse or introspection. Like, maybe we shouldn't have run that, or maybe I should delete this tweet, or maybe we should retract the story. No, they just leave it out there. What do you think?
I don't think there is any shame, and I think they know exactly what they're doing most of the time. I don't think they care, because that reached so many people before the retraction ever came. And how many people did the retraction? It wasn't even a retraction before the update came out, and how many people read that? So the misleading the public had already occurred. This is kind of reminiscent of remember the talk about Trump and the sun being able to, and Clorox, bleach, and as a therapy, and people tried to make the claim that he was saying that literally, that you should inject or consume bleach. And then there was that guy, I don't know, somewhere in the Midwest, and his wife claimed he supposedly had heard that and decided to take bleach. And the media was in an uproar. Blood on Trump's hands for suggesting such a thing. And then it turned out that, didn't it end up like a murder investigation, like where the wife had actually killed the guy?
Yeah, I don't know if they were suspicious of that. It wasn't bleach; it was hydroxychloroquine, and so there was a form of it that was used in aquariums or something. And so
that's right.
Supposedly they heard him talking about hydroxychloroquine, and they went and found something that wasn't the same and took like way more than they should have, or that's the wife's story. So it was it's so
I don't remember
hard.
What the total outcome was, but it turned out to be complete BS.
Yeah, the story was dropped pretty quickly, but it had already done the damage.
Exactly.
So, on a related front, Pfizer initiates phase 1 study of novel oral antiviral therapeutic agent against SARS-CoV-2. This is a press release from Pfizer, and a lot of people are calling this Pfizer-mectin or something like that, which is a play on the ivermectin. And they're actually, they have some similar traits in these drugs. They're touting this potential drug as a protease inhibitor as part of its function. Protease inhibitor would be something that prevents the virus from replicating in cells. And coincidentally, ivermectin does the same thing. Now, because they're trying to get their own patent on it, it has to have a different mechanism by which it does that, or else they wouldn't be able to get the patent. But now Pfizer is trying to get this drug approved so it can be an oral therapeutic agent against COVID. Now, that's just something that's interesting to me. They're going to be pushing, once these get approved, they're going to be pushing these pills too. But again, there's so many natural things that you could do that may be just as effective or close to. And I would rather take a pill that is not going to have a long-term side effect. Maybe this does, but I'd be way more apt to take something that I could that's not going directly into my bloodstream. That you know, I don't know.
Absorbs into the
But
system.
it's just interesting to see this type of thing coming out.
Yeah, and from, Pfizer's probably looking at it and going, well, these vaccines just aren't as effective as we thought, or maybe we knew, who knows? But, money. There's another opportunity. This ivermectin thing seems to actually be doing something for sick people. Let's get in on that game. Money. They just don't care. I don't think
Money.
they care about health. They just want to make money.
Well, I've been so disappointed in the lack of just, okay, you got COVID, now we're supposed to just like take it and just go. They're not even recommending like chicken soup or something. Like there's always something that you can do to help reduce the symptoms of these things. And
Right.
to me, it's everyone's going to get it sooner or later, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be if you're able to fend it off, and hopefully people are. I think just with the evidence that we've been seeing, that the vaccinated are getting it as well as the unvaccinated, and it's just kind of there's no certainty in any of this.
I think that's accurate, that, this is going to be around for a long time. And so ultimately, most of the population is going to be exposed to this at some point. And one article I was reading was making the point, this is exactly why kids need to be exposed to it. They need to be in school. They don't, you don't need the masks. They need to be exposed to this virus because they're young and healthy, and the statistics on their resistance to this virus are phenomenal. And so if they get it now, they'll have that immunity recognition, and that will bode well for them as they get older. And so what we've done is, just atrocious in our policies of, stopping school, and then, requiring vaccinations and masks and stuff. It just doesn't make any sense.
My wife told me the other day she was feeling ill, that she couldn't taste her food. And I don't want to say that I was excited, because I don't want people to get sick. And maybe it was just because her food had no flavor that day. Just kidding, dear. She makes excellent food.
She's a great cook.
She is. She's an excellent cook. But I don't want to. Do I hope that I get the virus? Like, no, but I don't want to get sick, but I want to I want to be protected against it.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. It's like, okay, it's flu season. Like, okay, I'm going to avoid that. And I think most people do pretty well at avoiding the flu, right? But if you get it, it's kind of like, okay, I've got it now. Now, good, going forward. And I realize we're talking about two different types of viruses, but yeah, I think a lot of people just, when they do get it, they go, okay, I got it. Let's battle it. But there's a real acceptance there. I think that's how I would be.
I think we need to start learning to accept that you can't stop a virus from spreading,
doing what it wants
that easily.
To do.
It's gonna go where it wants to go. Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, of course, there are ways to stop it, but applying those methods broadly to society have not worked, in my estimation.
And what I've read about immunology, the little I've read, but this seems to be basic to, this is immunology 101, is that the viruses want to survive. They don't want the host to die, right? They have no, that doesn't allow them to survive. And so as they start killing hosts, that's a disincentive. And so that's why they tend to mutate a lot of times, and it becomes a lesser danger over time. And then they can survive in the host without, killing the host. And I think that's kind of I could be wrong on that, but I think that's kind of the attitude we should have been taking with this all along.
Well, the
Protect,
COVID
you
didn't.
certain protect the, like we always say, protect the those with issues and those that are maybe a little bit elderly.
The
Protect
vulnerable.
them as much as possible, but the rest of us should be going about our business and living life.
So the coronavirus didn't last too long in Joe Rogan. I'm sure you've heard of this story also.
Yeah.
So Joe Rogan, approximately a week ago, gets on Instagram and announced that he had contracted COVID-19. And he immediately, he got a test. He found out it was positive. He says he threw the kitchen sink at it. Some of the therapeutics that he used included monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, an NAD drip, vitamin drip, and he did those 3 days in a row. He said he felt bad the first night, and then the subsequent 3 or 4 days after that, he got better and better. And so he hasn't been vaccinated, and so people are so mad at him for basically not dying. And so what does this story tell us? Is there anything to be gleaned from this? I know it's just a anecdotal story, but is there anything that we can take from this to make any sense of this?
Yeah, I'm gonna get that cocktail if I get COVID and have major symptoms. Hopefully I won't. You know what? I feel like I can. I think there's two factors with illness, and one is fear, right? If you're fearful of something, you're just going to attract it, right? I think the emotional body, the well-being, the overall well-being of your physical body has a lot to say about whether or not we get ill. I don't think that's quackery by any means. But I think fear is an emotion that just lowers your resistance to that. So that's number one. Number two, if I get it, I'm just going to fast. I'm going to go immediately on a 4-day fast, and usually by day 4, I can beat just about any bacteria or virus. It ceases to have any symptoms in my body. So I'm throwing that out there to the general public as a very simple means. No, it takes some diligence to fast that long, but worth it rather than ending up struggling to breathe. But if not, I'll go to Joe Rogan and get the cocktail.
So I need to read this Babylon Bee headline because it's so funny. So the big, I'll set this up because a lot of people don't know that the ivermectin was being labeled as a horse dewormer, and that was the big thing. So he says, this is the parody. I'm doing better, but I'm still a little hoarse. It's just kind of a funny little thing. He said, and I'll read the story because it's really short and funny. Podcaster Joe Rogan has announced that he's feeling better, but is still going around with a long face and is feeling a little hoarse after recovering from his illness with a concoction of drugs prescribed by his doctor. Yeah, I'm still a little long in the face and feeling a little hoarse, he said on his podcast. I'm just about ready to get back in the saddle, though. We want to hit things hard when I come back at full gallop. The main thing is we're going to ride this thing out and trot out our new stable of guests real soon here. Feels like I'm on the tail end of this thing and we can see the finish line now.
Nice puns.
Just kind of funny. Okay, so if I get sick, I haven't been stay-home sick. Have I mentioned this in probably 10 home years? I think one day.
Yeah.
The instant I feel any sort of cold or anything coming on, I load up on zinc and vitamin D.
Yep.
And if I have some good vitamin C, I load up on that. I also have an ozone machine that I use, which is highly effective against most pathogens. And it's very stimulative to the immune system. So I also have something that's called monolaurin. Monolaurin is an extract from coconut, and it's It's basically what it does. It's basically a soap. A lot of these particles, a lot of these viruses have a lipid layer on them, which is basically fat, and this monolaurin breaks up that outer casing of that and basically destroys the virus. And so I load up on monolaurin too. And so that's been kind of the protocol that I've used. My family's used it. And like I say, I know this is anecdotal, so you can't,
Yeah.
this is not proven by science. There are all sorts of studies with each one of those individual things talking about prevention and help, treatment of certain illnesses and things like that. So individually, there are a bunch of studies. There's more and more research coming out about vitamin D and the effectiveness of that. And so that's what I would do if I were feeling symptoms. So we've been saying this whole time, there are all sorts of things we can do. You just look at the statistics. There's already a 99% chance that you're going to survive. We're probably going to get it. So you might as well get your body into shape, get it so it's healthy, so that you can fend off these viruses and other bacteria. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, better than 90% chance, especially if you're under 70 and don't have pre-existing conditions, right? I mean, it's just a small percentage that get really sick and an even smaller percentage that die. So yeah, I think that's right. I think there's tons of remedies, experiment, play around with it, I'm not saying do anything drastic, but yeah, the zinc, we take the zinc, the vitamin D, get some sun, every day as much as you can. Bare chest, face, if you have a private backyard anyway. Yeah, some forms of vitamin C are good. Hydrogen peroxide, I found is good for when the symptoms are early. I'll gargle. I don't recommend gargling like for days and days or every hour. One time, because otherwise you'll kill too much of the good bacteria and you could burn your throat a little bit, but a little bit of gargling if it's affecting your throat. I've had success doing that. I'll swab my nose if I start to feel a little bit sinus issues going on. So yeah, lots of easy home remedies that can battle these things, and then be positive and don't fear it.
Yeah, I had forgotten about hydrogen peroxide. I had read, I didn't read the study, but I read the headline, so take it for what it's worth. But gargling with the mouthwash when you start to feel these coming on, and one of those could be hydrogen peroxide, is effective in, not every time, but it can help reduce the symptoms and help fend off those viruses. So that's a good point. So sometimes there's so many things we can do.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sometimes you pick up even a bacteria in your throat, right?
Yeah. So wrapping up, I know you're surprised that we're wrapping up because it's been a little bit shorter. Clap, clap, clap. We talked about starting a new country last week. And so the week before, I was looking at cruise ships, used cruise ships for sale, and used ones. Well, this past week, I was looking at floating power stations. So, because with the cruise ship, you're going to have to run the generators and things like that. Most likely they run on diesel or fuel oil or something like that. And so it'd be very expensive. Well, they have floating natural gas generators. They have floating nuclear generators. So anyway, that was just something that I had looked into.
Buy one.
You're going to buy one? We need to crowdfund. We need to crowdfund this. So
I'm all about nuclear.
Yeah, all about the nuclear.
Give me a reactor.
In my new country that I start, if I were starting a new country, I would outlaw a few things. One of those being health insurance. I think everyone should pay cash for their health insurance or for their health. that's just, because then we have a true free market, and things would get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and we would find out what actually works instead of just what the insurance says they think works.
Yeah.
Another thing, no unemployment. So no welfare. I don't like the idea of welfare, with the exception of people who are disabled. And maybe even I could be convinced that we could do something privately to help with that. Speaking of unemployment, today, in addition to it being Bitcoin Day in El Salvador, it's the day that the extended unemployment benefits expire in the United States. So now there was this kind of an uproar, and it didn't seem to hit very well because people are saying the obvious solution. There were stories put out that all of these people are now going to be out on the streets because they're not getting their monthly or weekly or however often the check is. I saw a story, there were 10 million jobs available right now. I mean, pretty much not every, but so many different businesses are trying to hire people right now, and they can't get people to stay because a lot of people are just more comfortable. They're making more money staying at home. This is one of the reasons that we're having shortages and having problems with the supply chain. And, that's one of the reasons, because we can't man the lines. We can't man the trucks that are delivering the items. And so is there a spot for unemployment insurance and things like that? Or should we kick this off, eliminate it forever?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends on a lot of things, but I don't mind a little safety net here and there. But yeah, the idea is to make the economy as robust and people incentivized to work as much as possible. So yeah, I don't think, I think you want limits. If you're going to have those kinds of investments for, a temporary, 1 or 2 or 3 month period, fine. But the effort should be on looking for a job, and all of those benefits contingent on that. And I realize that opens a can of worms, because then you just invite expansion of those programs. So maybe you're right. Maybe just do away with it all. We'll find you a job.
I think that,
or we'll help you.
We tend to think of it just as we're eliminating unemployment insurance, or we're eliminating unemployment or welfare in general. We assume that everything else will stay the same, and that people won't adapt to the new situation. It's not like we've always had these things. These are a relatively new invention by people in the modern world. Of course, you could say, well, it really sucked back then because people were poor and they were dying. Well, I don't know. I don't know that that's the case, but I think there needs to be a big shift away from government providing these types of things and toward people doing it of their own free will through charity. And that's just my soapbox for the day. I don't know. There's a lot of things going on that I don't agree with. I, of course, would leave it up to the people. That's what citizen representatives is all about. It's about coming together as people to elect somebody that will follow the will of the people. And I think that's something that is going to make a big wave once it catches on. This is one of those things that I'm hoping takes a lot of people in power by surprise, because I don't want to. This was one of the big things that I worried about before I started talking about this. And again, this is not my idea. This is an idea from our mutual friend, J.J. Dewey. It was a big fear of mine that, I'm going to stick my head up and have it chopped off metaphorically. But I'm hoping it happens so quickly that it's not going to matter that I'm doing anything with it. And if nothing ever comes of it, I will at least have done my, given it my best effort and tried to get the ideas out there. I think it's going to catch on eventually, and I'm hoping that it'll make a big difference in the United States and in the world. Any last thoughts from you, Adam?
Oh, I just echo that. I think the idea of molecular politics, molecular businesses, molecular communities coming together, people of having a truly democratic process, being able to keep looking for the good of the whole, but also the individual being satisfied that their interests are met, and that they're thriving and able to push and excel. I think those are concepts that will come about. It's just how long it takes us to get there. So, yeah.
All right, excellent. This has been another episode of the Citizen Representatives Podcast. Again, I'm Tyler with my friend Adam. We're available on YouTube, Facebook, where all the podcasts are. Please share this. Visit our website, citizenrepresentatives.org. We appreciate you spending your time to listen and watch us today, and we will catch you next time.